want to read 1 through 5.
It's 61 or 62?
62. Oh, I'm sorry, 62, 1 through 5. Not 1 through 15. That was my typo. 1 through 5.
All right, I'll go. The Lord says, "For the good of Zion, I will not keep silent. For Jerusalem's benefit, I will not remain quiet. I will not keep silent until its people's godliness shines like the sunrise. I will not remain quiet until they are saved and shine like a blazing torch. Jerusalem, the nations will see that I've made everything right for you. All of their kings will see your glory. You will be called by a new name. I myself will give it to you. You will be like a glorious crown in my strong hand. You will be like a royal crown in my powerful hand. People will not call you deserted anymore. They will no longer name your land empty. Instead, you will be called the one the Lord delights in. Your land will be named the married one. I will take delight in you, and your land will be like a bride. As a young man gets married to a young woman, your people will marry you. As a groom is happy with his bride, I will be full of joy over you."
Thank you. Okay, what sort of jumps out at you right away? Yeah, don't worry. That's most people's reaction to the Old Testament. Like, what the heck is going on? But we see images here. Salvation like a burning torch. The sort of the salvation of the people from Babylon back to Jerusalem. The nations shall see your vindication. They'll see that Cyrus has delivered you, and that you have this glory, and that from that they will trust in God too. That they will see that this is the God of gods. You shall no more be termed forsaken. Your land shall no more be termed desolate. It's like, okay, so that bad stuff that happened in Jerusalem, it's going to be taken care of. It's going to be sort of like redone, so to speak. And then you will no longer be alone. You'll be married. The image is, and Paul has this image too in the New Testament, of Christ marrying the church, the bride and the bridegroom prepared for one another. That from this there'll be harmony and peace. And that's kind of what Isaiah is getting at.
So the other part, it's going to be so much better than it was before.
Yeah.
So you're not going back to the old.
Right.
You're going back to a new.
There's better to come. Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. You shall be called by a new name. So remember the Old Testament and the New Testament, whenever anybody renames somebody, you should be like, okay, be on guard. Something huge is about to happen, right? So Abram was renamed Abraham. Sarai was renamed Sarah. Jesus renames Cephas, Peter, or Peter to Cephas. Saul becomes Paul. Like, these are all these huge name changes, and I think that's what the sense is in verse 2. And you shall be called by a new name, kind of like what Rick is saying, is that this is going to be even better. This is new. You won't be the old Jerusalem. You will be a new Jerusalem that will be better. So I want to ask: have any of you ever had your name changed? Especially
when I got married.
Yeah.
And the process.
Yeah. And you changed your name. Yeah. So I think, was there a change? Like, when y'all changed your names, did you feel different?
I did. I mean, I doodled it enough, Kessler McClanahan,
Sure.
younger, but it like coming to a new state and not having a real address yet, and having my name changed, but not on my social security card yet, and like just that sort of thing. And then with my email, having to switch that over, and people calling me different things, and so new people here will know me as Kessler McClanahan.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I grew up Kessler Brown back home,
right?
So that's just kind of weird in between place to be.
Yeah.
Well, my maiden name was a little more unique. So when you moved to Harris,
Oh yeah.
I gotta get used to just being one of, you know.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
But you didn't have to spell it. So
Yeah.
there's something to be said
Yeah.
for, you know,
Yeah.
like you say your name,
Yeah.
and people are like, oh, okay. You know, they can go ahead and have the conversation you were going to have
Yeah.
instead of
Yeah.
what? You know?
Exactly. Yeah.
So, yeah, there was a change. I mean, it kind of felt like you lost a little bit of identity of being unique.
Yeah. Yeah, but the idea, I didn't even think about this, like an email address.
Oh yeah.
You know, like, whoa.
Yeah, I didn't have to do
Yeah,
that.
all of mine.
We didn't have
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Like on Facebook,
Cards,
right? Yeah.
Facebook,
Uh-huh. Yeah, all that.
Twitter.
Yeah.
Instagram.
Yeah.
Still
You're
haven't figured that one out
yeah.
yet.
But you're different now. Like I think there's a sense that
Yeah.
that you're and I think that's what Isaiah is getting at. That you as a people going back home, it will be different.
You're not the
You
same.
won't be the same. Which I think is really cool. It gives us hope. I think a lot of times we talk about how the Old Testament is full of like doom and gloom and God like smiting people. It's like, hold on, like read stuff like this. Like this is
And
this is
one-
really
the one
cool.
from last week too was really uplifting. So
Which one was that? I forgot.
the do not be afraid.
Oh yeah. For I love you.
It's like on the sign outside.
Yeah. Ooh, yeah. I forgot about that. Look at verse 3. You shall be a crown of beauty in the hand of the Lord and a royal diadem in the hand of your God. There's some ancient commentators will say that, you know, Jerusalem sat upon a hill and its walls made it look like a crown. Again, that sort of image of kingliness. And that really pairs well with the season of Epiphany because we've just had the wise men, the kings from the east. So you'll see images also of kingship throughout these passages. Cool. Any other sort of questions there? Comments? All right, let's move on. 1 Corinthians 12. Right towards the New Testament, past Romans, Acts, 1st, 2nd Romans. So just a little background. Here's Corinth-ish. It was a port city. You can still go to Corinth and see the ancient ruins. The ancient ruins are no longer where the modern city is. I think the modern city has moved a little bit down the road. Just a little bit of context. The church in Corinth was planted by Paul, probably in, like the 40s, 50s, 60s. So within a couple of decades after Jesus, which is about early 30s AD. So it looks like he came in, he planted this church, he left, and we may be talking about like 40 people at the Church of Corinth. Sometimes we think like, oh, the First Corinthians, like it was probably pretty small. So they're gone, or he leaves on his missionary travels around the Mediterranean, and somebody else comes in behind him, another guy called Apollos. And it looks like Apollos has some other teachings that don't line up exactly with Paul. And there's some friction. There's a little bit of tension there. We studied 1 Corinthians, I guess that was a year ago now. And it's really interesting. I mean, this is like what happens in Episcopal churches, right? Like, well, the last rector said we could, This is the same thing happening here. It's like, well, Apollo says that we should, what's up with you, Paul? Like, there's a little bit of tension there. So a lot of 1 Corinthians is dealing with the church in conflict and writing about unity. And in chapter 11, right before we get to 12, he's talking about the Holy Eucharist, the Lord's Supper, and how that is a sign of unity. We're all bound together by this. Then he actually talks about what diversity looks like, and that's in these spiritual gifts. So will somebody read chapter 12, verses 1 through 11?
I'll do it.
Cool.
Now about spiritual gifts, brothers, I do not want you to be ignorant. You know that when you were pagans, somehow or other, you were influenced and led astray to mute idols. Therefore I tell you that no one who is speaking by the Spirit of God says, Jesus be cursed, and no one can say Jesus is Lord except for the Holy Spirit. There are different kinds of gifts, but the same Spirit. There are different kinds of service, but the same Lord. There are different kinds of working, but the same God works all of them in all men. Now to each one of the manifestation of the Spirit is given for the common good. To one there is given through the Spirit the message of wisdom, to another the message of knowledge by means of the same Spirit, to another faith by the same Spirit, to another gifts of healing by that one Spirit, to another miraculous powers, to another prophecy, to another distinguishing between spirits, to another speaking in different kinds of tongues, and to still another the interpretation of tongues. All these are the work of one and the same Spirit, and he gives them to each one just as he determines.
Cool. Thank you. Okay, a couple things. Y'all all have the NIV. Y'all. Did yours match with hers?
No, mine's
Nope.
different. Or no, mine's NIV.
Yeah, the NIV.
Mine is different than hers. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Okay. But does everybody have brothers? Like first line?
Yeah.
Brothers. Okay.
Brothers and sisters.
Oh, you have brothers and sisters.
Brothers and sisters.
Ah, interesting. Okay, so let's try to really side of this clearly. The Greek word there is adelphos, which can mean brothers and sisters. It can mean cousins. It's a sort of word in ancient Greek that just meant like kinship. Now we've translated it as brothers, and some translations will sort of clear that up to sort of say that clearly it was not just men, like to sort of clarify that language, which I think is important. There are other places that some translations have actually made that comrades, which sounds really weird, but it's supposed to imply that sort of kinship. So whenever you read brothers or brothers and sisters, that's what it's getting at. So you can tell the work of the translator is already difficult. How to make it fit our sort of common context now. Let's see. Okay, let's look at verse 3. Therefore, I want you to understand that no one speaking by the Spirit of God ever says, let Jesus be cursed, and no one can say Jesus is Lord except by the Holy Spirit. That Jesus is Lord was probably the earliest creed of the church. We now have the Nicene Creed and the Apostles' Creed. It looks like, because it shows up in a couple other places, Jesus is Lord was the first sort of thing that we ever said about what we believe. And there's sort of an implied jab there, because at the time you had to say that Caesar was Lord. And so there's an implied jab here. Jesus is Lord, Caesar is not. That Jesus is Lord, not the powers of this world. And so you take that forward to today, you have to say, Jesus is Lord, the president is not. Jesus is Lord, the Constitution, or, whatever it is, the Houston Texans are not, that's the image of lordship. And this is why Christians got themselves in trouble all the time. Because you think they're surrounded. I mean, Corinth was a pagan city. So you're surrounded by all these pagans, and all of a sudden you're saying, I don't believe any of that. I don't even believe in your ruler. There would have clearly been some being ostracized pretty quickly. Because look at verse 2. I love this. You know that when you were pagans. Like, what a great line. Yeah. So what do y'all think about that the sort of image of lordship? Ruler, authority. Does it sort of rattle us today, or are we just sort of, I guess I'm thinking about it because of the presidential elections that have now been going on forever. It seems to me that both sides will say, if the other person is elected, it's the end of the world.
Yeah.
And both sides are saying, if our person is elected, then it will be the greatest thing since sliced bread. Like they're the savior of America or whatever. And it's sort of like, whoa. Like, as Christians, we say, this all plays second fiddle. Like, that Jesus is Lord. And I think that even just watching my Facebook feed, watching, my Christian friends like get sucked into this world, you're like, whoa, this is not Christian. Like, Jesus is Lord. None of these people. I don't know. That's just my sort of thought.
That power.
Yeah.
That ability.
I think when people are first starting out and they're first becoming a church, it's easy to kind of get sucked into those ultimatum kind of things because it unifies people. And so
Mm.
maybe for the time it worked, but
Mhm.
as it progressed, it did kind of become not what
Yeah.
it really supposed to be about.
Yeah. Yeah. And we've taken now Lord to be such a sort of a spiritual sense.
Mhm.
But back then, it would have been a very sort of heavily political sense. And we also have to understand, like, okay, that just changes over time. But it is like this sort of, I think it can catch us a little bit.
Well, it's kind of like them trying to take God out of everything, but it's really still there. I told Rick, I said, where it's
Yeah,
become a big
yeah.
issue, like,
Yeah.
you know, the I don't know, something in front of a civic building, you know, and they want to take
Sure.
but they do the national anthem, you know,
Yeah.
they all that stuff they do, and you know, so they have a moment of silence instead of saying it's prayer.
Yeah.
Your child still has the chance to.
Yeah. It's really
You know, I mean,
interesting.
it's still very much there when you start
Yeah.
really paying attention.
Yeah.
They can't really
Yeah.
take it out. It's just those feudal battlegrounds that become,
Yeah.
which kind of like these presidents becoming, or
Yeah.
these candidates becoming something bigger than they
Sort of a
are.
lightning rod. Yeah.
And so, if you really look at it, it's not really leaving. It's just,
Yeah.
it's not even inconspicuous. It's just so natural.
It's really interesting. Stanley Hauerwas, who's an Episcopalian, one of the sort of America's foremost theologians, teaches at Duke, very conservative, says, I don't want anybody praying. I don't want anybody teaching my kids at school how to pray because I want my priest teaching them how to pray, not some I was like, well, that's really interesting too, like coming from his background and who he is. I was like, oh, so maybe part of this too is that I think as Christians also, we have to ask the second question, like the question behind the question, rather than getting sucked into, you know, should we have the 10 Commandments on the lawn? Well, what are the 10 Commandments? Like what bearing do they have on our lives anyway? You know, and on our corporate life, you know,
And who
whatever.
reads them on the civic law,
Yeah.
you know,
I don't-
takes it. So, yeah.
But all that is above my pay grade. So I don't really. Okay, so these varieties of gifts, what strikes y'all? Anything strike y'all?
I think initially the tongues situation.
Yeah, we want to talk about tongues.
Okay,
Yes.
great. Because I don't really understand. Like, I know that I have students, or I have students who I taught in Mississippi who had grandmas that could speak in tongues and stuff. And so they would talk about that sometimes. And I was just like, tell me more about this. What is going on, really? Like,
Okay, yeah, so the Greek word is glossolalia. How cool is that? That's a cool word.
You can't even say
But
that.
it really, I think it goes back to the Pentecost story. Remember how the Holy Spirit comes upon the disciples and they're able to speak in various tongues. The whole point of speaking in tongues is so that people who do not speak your own language can also hear the gospel. Paul's very clear that if somebody's speaking in tongues and there's no interpreter, that they should not be speaking in tongues. Because then it just becomes like a sort of show.
Mhm.
It's not, because this whole point, the whole point, look at verse 7, to each is given the manifestation of the Spirit for the common good. So it's not just like for grandma to sort of, you know, be talking, but it's supposed to build up the community somehow. And if it's not building up the community, yeah. Have you ever heard somebody speak in tongues?
No, I haven't.
Have any of y'all?
No.
A bunch of Episcopalians. No, I've never heard somebody speak in tongues. Like, you know, that's also kind of us. Like, it's not the parable. Yeah, yeah. No, I never have. I never have. But is that sort of, what else do you think about it?
I mean, I want it just, and I feel like maybe I'm coming from ignorance, but I just don't really know what the validity of it is. And since you said something about, like, if it's a foreign language, then that would, I mean, I understand that bit about,
Yeah.
you know, trying to reach someone where they are to bring them Christianity.
Sure.
Like, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But I've just never really understood, like, if it was some, like, different language that no one really knew, and then someone randomly knows what you're speaking. Like, I just don't know. I just never really understood what that meant.
Yeah. I mean, this is like one of the sort of big themes throughout the Holy Scriptures, right? It starts with the Tower of Babel,
Mhm.
like really where we get the word, like just a Babylon,
Yeah.
that, you know, everybody's confused. And then comes Pentecost, when notice not everybody then speaks the same language, but that we are given the ability to speak to others in their own language. And then I think this is actually Paul working out what Pentecost means for the church, and it's that if you were given that gift, it should be for the common good. So you get Paul.
Yeah, I like the explanation. It's just another language.
Yeah.
That makes more sense than
Yeah.
sometimes what you hear
Yeah.
is that it's not a language. I mean,
Right.
Yeah.
So then
A universal code.
It
Yeah,
begins to
yeah.
become a little bit. Really?
Yeah.
You know.
I was kind of like picturing like Parseltongue in Harry Potter.
Who? Which one?
Parseltongue and like when they oh Lord.
Speak like snakes.
Like
That's
yeah,
not a
like
person.
Lord Voldemort can speak to snakes.
Oh,
and he
yeah,
can
yeah,
make
yeah, yeah.
the sea sound.
Did y'all ever watch Harry Potter?
I'm
No, I watched them, but I kind of forgot. It's
No, that
Totally
makes sense
fine.
what you said.
I can get really nerdy about it sometimes.
No, you're all fine.
We're tuning in.
No, here you are.
So my question for y'all is, do you see in this list anything that the Spirit has given you?
I think one of the things that came to my mind is that, I'm currently going through the OSL study,
Mm-hmm.
and that's about healing,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm discerning whether or not I
Yeah.
have that gift.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I believe it is a discernment process.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then also, I think the beautiful thing, and this is why I say it in my commission of the prayer team, is that sort of body means so many, or healing doesn't just mean bodily, but it's also like the emotional and the spiritual.
Absolutely.
That I think there is that sort of, I think there's real beauty in that. Like, what does that mean?
Well, in each one of these gifts that he's talking about is gifts to give others.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. I don't even think about that.
I think it depends on what parts of your life too. Different parts.
Yeah,
Who's in your life.
yeah. I mean, I acknowledge that at the age of 30, I don't know if I really have the utterance of wisdom, but maybe in 30 years I will. That will be something that the Spirit sort of works on me.
Well, and to people who are going through seminary, you would have lots of wisdom for them. It just kind of like you said.
Yeah.
It just kind
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
You're
Yep.
you're looking at
Right.
it as experience, and
That's true. Yeah.
and it's different.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't see that necessarily.
And think of
Just have one.
prophecy. Look at to know the working miracles, to know the prophecy in verse 10. Prophecy really isn't about like telling the future. It's about speaking the truth. And I think we all have in our lives the truth tellers, the people who sort of, they say, here's the truth. I think that's really important for us to have. And then to another, the discernment of spirits. Say like, I have a spiritual director and he helps me discern. It's kind of like what Carol was saying. It was like, somebody's just helping to discern like what is going on in my life. What, the sort of my own sort of spiritual life. What helped me figure all this out. And then right after this is the passage about, we've often heard about the body, like the eye can't say to the hand, I don't need you. So it is important to remember that in the church, we have all of those people. I made the joke about like the pinky toe this morning, like, somebody at the church is the pinky toe. They're incredibly important. They may not look like it, but they are important. And so it's, we just kind of always have to keep our eyes open. To know that everybody has a gift. It may be even just a little one. Anything?
In a lot of Corinthians is Paul yelling at everybody.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
I mean, this is more, there's a lot of don'ts,
Mm-hmm.
stop,
Mm-hmm.
but there's not that much here. I mean,
Mhm.
it is more on the positive side for this section.
Right. And you think about it, like he kind of gets from this, he's talked about, the Eucharist and spiritual gifts. And then we have 1 Corinthians 13, which like everybody knows,
Mhm.
about love.
And before this, it's the Lord's Supper,
Yeah.
which is incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. But you're right. Beforehand, he's like berating them, like,
Yeah.
you idiots. Yeah.
Mhm.
Which, what we wish we had was the letters from the church in Corinth to Paul. Oh man, I really want to read those. Like, what are they talking about?
Reply to all.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, that'd be great. But we don't have them. Too bad. Yeah, Paul's on Facebook. That'd be terrible. Okay, let's go to John. This is the one I really want to spend some time with. John 2, 1 through 11. So just in context, Jesus has just called his first disciples. There's no Christmas story in the Gospel of John. There's that poem about in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. But there's no like angels or manger or anything. It's like Jesus shows up. Jesus performs 7 signs in the Gospel of John. He does, we call them miracles, but John is really intent. He calls them signs, like a sort of sign of his power of the coming kingdom. And the wedding miracle is the first one. Then it's immediately after this that Jesus goes to Jerusalem for the first time and clears out the money changers from the temple. Now, that's peculiar in the Gospel of John. In the other 3 Gospels, that takes place at the end of his ministry, and that's really the reason he's crucified. So it's curious that John has actually moved that to the beginning. It kind of is that thing that the way I think about it is Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John were all standing on 4 corners of an intersection, and they all saw a car accident, and each one saw things a little bit differently. So it's kind of it's all the same story, but maybe John was, I don't know, tying a shoe and like also looked up. I think that's the way we have to sort of approach the differences in the Gospels. Okay, so verses 1 through 11. Now, y'all are married in the Episcopal Church. Y'all are married in the Episcopal Church. You know, like the marriage service in the Episcopal Church, we talk about this. Like, we all know this.
I'll read it.
Thank you.
On the 3rd day, there was a wedding. It took place at Cana of Galilee. Jesus' mother was there. Jesus and his disciples had also been invited to the wedding. When the wine was gone, Jesus' mother said to him, "They have no more wine." "Dear woman, why do you bring me into this?" Jesus replied. "My time has not yet come." His mother said to the servants, "Do what he tells you." 6 stone water jars stood nearby. The Jews used water from that kind of jar for special washings to make themselves pure. Each jar could hold 20 to 30 gallons. Jesus said to the servants, "Fill the jars with water." So they filled them to the top. Then he told them, "Now dip some out. Take it to the person in charge of the dinner." They did what he said. The person in charge tasted the water that had been turned into wine. He didn't realize where it had come from, but the servants who had brought the water knew. Then the person in charge called the groom to one side. He said to him, "Everyone brings out the best wine first. They bring out the cheaper wine after the guests have had too much to drink. But you have saved the best until now." That was the first of Jesus' miraculous signs. He did it at Cana of Galilee. Jesus showed his glory by doing it, and his disciples put their faith in him.
Thank you. Very cool. Excellent. Okay, what comes up?
One piece that don't understand is my time has not yet come.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what I think is going on here is, and he does this in a couple other places. He'll do a miracle and like, don't tell anybody about it. Yeah. What I think is happening is that he doesn't want people to confuse the small signs for the big sign that is the resurrection that's coming. And so I think he's kind of saying, keep this quiet because my time has not yet come. The time is crucifixion and resurrection. So I think he does these things as signs of his power, but it's not for the whole world to see. Whereas the crucifixion happens on a mountaintop or on a hilltop. This is sort of done. When you kind of read it, it's like his mom, the disciples, and just a few of the waiters who actually see it happen. So I think part of it is my time for the big show isn't here yet. That's the best way I can understand it, but it's kind of funky.
Well, then it got printed in the world's like top seller. So
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then I think the idea is that we can read this through the lens of the resurrection, like saying, okay, that's the important thing. And these were just sort of smaller signs that pointed to that his time had not yet come yet for everybody to know what he could do.
But then didn't he kind of?
But then he does it anyway.
Yeah, and didn't he kind of give credit to the groom, saying that he saved the best for?
Let's see. That's the chief steward says that.
Okay.
No. So it is interesting because Jesus does it. Doesn't, people see it. He doesn't really take a whole lot of credit for it, though.
So when
Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
In passage 10,
Oh yeah.
at the end of that passage, it says, "But you have saved the best until now."
Yeah, so that is, look at verse 9. When the steward tasted the water that had become wine and did not know where to come from, the servants who had drawn the water knew. The steward called the bridegroom and said to him.
So is the steward.
Yeah.
saying that.
Yeah. So they're trying to figure out,
Yeah, it makes sense that they don't know Jesus. They think
right,
the bride or the groom
right.
is just hanging out with this wine.
yeah, right. I mean, it is kind of a funny image, like, we've done this, right? Like, you serve the best stuff at the, or, in the
Right after you
beginning.
pull out whatever's in the cabinet.
Right, then you're like, oh my God, they're still drinking. Like, here's a Coors Light. I don't know. Like,
Well, and going back to the thing I'm hung up on,
yeah.
do you think maybe, since this was the first of his signs,
Mhm.
that maybe originally he didn't think he would need to do these signs?
Yeah,
If
perhaps.
he was hesitant about it, was just going to wait for the big bang.
Yeah, perhaps. Yeah.
and his mom knew he would do it.
Yeah.
She knew.
Moms.
Yeah.
Moms know.
Yeah.
Because mom said to. I have to now.
Yeah, he didn't hesitate. He just
Yeah.
mumbled.
Okay, verse 4, back up a sentence before what we're talking about. Y'all have dear woman?
Yes.
Okay, so strictly translated, it's like woman, which comes across as a derogatory now. Then it was more of a term of endearment. It was more like a less formal version of madam. Like, so it's not like Jesus saying woman, like it's
That was
a nice term. It's the same word that Jesus uses to speak to his mother when he's hanging on the cross and talking to the beloved disciple when he says, woman, behold your son, and behold your mother. Like, there's a sort of it's not supposed to be sort of mean spirited. Let's see. Okay, so I was reading, you can see one of your bullet points. I just thought this line was hilarious. The modest water saw its God and blushed.
Yeah.
Which I was just
Little
like,
flowery stuff.
yeah, I
going
was
on
like,
here.
oh my God, like, you really wrote that? That's pretty funny. Okay, now, the other word I want to talk about is disciple. This is the first time it's used in John's Gospel. And we usually take it to mean follower. I think that word has become really weak, especially with the advent of Twitter. That following just seems sort of, I don't know, insipid maybe. Y'all know John Newton. You remember he preached here?
Mhm.
Okay, so he wrote his whole thesis on seminary that the word disciple could actually mean apprentice, which is a really cool image then, that Jesus is the master craftsman and we are the apprentices, and that our lives then should be a whole journey and a process to be learners and to sort of form ourselves into the likeness of Jesus, which I think is a much cooler image
I
than
like
just a
that so much
follower.
better.
Like, sort of like, yeah, because it's, I don't know, it's like the sort of,
You're working towards.
yeah.
Instead of a follower, can just be.
Jump on the bandwagon.
Yeah.
Right. And a follower, you're still, in a sense, like you're yourself, and you're just following Jesus, like this is like, no, you need to be sort of
Transforming
Yeah.
yourself.
transformed into that. Yeah. So think about that next time, whenever you see that word disciple, like, this is more about apprentice. And the believe in him, it's where, the word credo means like, I believe. It's where we get the word creed. Any of y'all speak Spanish? Credo is like, I believe. But it's not this kind of belief, it's this kind of belief. And I think it's better translated as, I put my trust in. Which again, it rattles us a little bit, that I think a lot of times when we stand up in church to say the Nicene Creed, I believe in God the Father Almighty, it's like, it's not here, it's here.
Well,
It's a
and-
trust.
And that kind of belief and follow can be passive actions.
Yeah.
Apprentice is an active piece.
Right. Oh yeah.
And the deeper belief
I'm gonna write that down.
is
Yeah. Yeah. So I think there are two big pieces of spiritual connection here. Is that whenever Jesus touches our lives, there is a change. I mean, this is huge. Like, Jesus shows up to his first thing, and there's a huge change. So the question is, like, when have y'all changed? Seriously, you don't have to share, but maybe just thinking, what was that time that you did change? What was that what did it look like when Jesus showed up, and what did change in your life?
Well, I've had a very recent touching of that in my job change
Mm-hmm.
and things that have happened there. So
Yeah.
obviously that Jesus was guiding every step of the way.
Yeah. Hey, look, y'all got married 6 months ago, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
And we
you
went to
did.
Canada. Right after the wedding, do you want to tell us? Okay, we went to Canada because Cody works for ExxonMobil, and so they needed Cody, not me. They needed Cody to go up there, and so we spent the first 6 months of our marriage in a hotel room that, in Canada, where,
And before, I lived in Houston and she lived in Mississippi. So we went from different states. to
Yeah.
a hotel.
yeah,
Oh, yeah.
that was yeah.
Country even know,
Yeah.
yeah.
And there were like several. I had to start cooking for the first, because I was like my only purpose because I couldn't go to work visa while we were up there, and so, so I was like cooking on this one stovetop, and several fires happened. It was bad, but I mean, it was a very, we had to deal with a lot, and we went to a church up there too, but they don't have physical churches. It was Anglican. And so the priest there was really great. And so that helped a lot, I think, too. To have something like the creeds that
Right.
we could say every
Yeah.
Sunday that was, okay, well, at least this one
Familiar.
thing is the same.
Yeah.
Sounds
Right,
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Any other experiences in OSL that you're sort of having? Just thinking about it's kind of what you mentioned before, sort of.
Mhm. Well, one of the things that, I knew this was a prayer group, but what I learned is that it's about healing, which I didn't
Mhm.
think of that.
Mhm.
I didn't recognize that or realize that out of my ignorance.
Mhm.
So that's been very powerful for me to know that it's about healing.
Mhm.
And then there's been a lot of sharing, of course, in the every time we have a meeting, from the people that are well experienced at this, and hearing the stories of some of the healing that's occurred is just, it's just amazing to me that have occurred in this
Mhm.
church.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So that, again, in my heart, I'm working towards, where do I fit in this? Do I
Yeah.
fit in this? And,
Yeah.
and that kind of thing. Yeah.
Huh.
What is OSM?
Oh, sorry. It's the Order of St. Luke. When the people come up for the prayer teams,
Mhm.
that's them, and they are a ministry of prayer and of healing, but really healing. And so oftentimes when, people let me know they're sick or whatever, I ask those all to pray for them. Yeah, I mean, pretty amazing stuff.
Yeah,
It's
it is.
very cool. And then the last one that, we sort of make this crack about, okay, so the good wine comes out, like Jesus makes good wine, whatever. But I really do think like it's pointing to the true nature of God, that there is always more and better to come. And I think this is the real sort of trick to Christianity, that actually the more you invest in it, the more you get out of it, and that there's always more and better to come. It's kind of the opposite of, at least I think of poor Maggie moving in with me. Like, you meet somebody for the first time, they're friendly, they're civil, they're considerate, whatever. And then you move in with that person, and all of a sudden you're like, you snore, you like, you leave the toilet seat up, whatever that is, that it's sort of like, there's that sort of harsh reality that they're not as saintly as you thought they were. It's the opposite with God, that the more you get to know God, the better God is. I think that's the message. I think that's also the message that Holy Comforter needs to hear right now. Sort of in the midst of our transitions, that it's okay. Like, more and better is to come. Do not panic. Like, it's gonna be okay. I think that's what we need to hear right now.
Yeah, especially with the parish meeting coming up.
Oh yeah.
It's really good to remind yourself of that.
Right. Yeah. And Carol's gonna be rolling on to the vestry, works the chair of the building committee, and so these are all things that I think we all need to hear, and that somehow it's gonna work out. It's gonna be okay. It's the wedding at Cana in Galilee. I really honestly believe that. Is there any I know that for me, even just like coming here, you don't really, you're sort of like, God, what, I was like 27, I had no idea what I was doing. And there's still that sense, but to see that, the God's Spirit is active, that it's okay. There's more and better to come. It may not look like more and better to the world's perspective, but that's okay. It's, it keeps going. Do you have any reflections on that? Any time in your life that it's been that way?
Well, this last few months have been,
Yeah.
but you could see God's plan in all of
Yeah.
it. But I don't know that we would have seen it 25 years ago
Mhm.
as easily. We could see it
Sure.
this time as it took place from day one. And
Well,
yet,
part of it was we were looking for it too.
we're looking for it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And we probably didn't see it in the last couple of years
Yeah.
as things were
Yeah.
getting crazy, and
Yeah.
we both were kind of, caught in it. And I will tell you, they needed you as much as they needed him. You are part of that,
Yeah.
and you either go into it as
Yeah.
as a team, and he is doing what he's doing because of what you're doing, and that's real important. Even when you have your own job and things, you've got to be, because we always talk about his company as, as if I was working there, it's
Yeah.
like, so some days I think, oops, maybe not, but you are part of it. But
Yeah.
but I do think we've learned to look for it a lot more,
Yeah.
even in the really
Yeah.
crazy times when you
Mhm.
think,
Yeah.
when things happen with our son and the legal system and some things. And
Yeah.
I really wasn't sure there for a few moments,
Yeah.
and then the people that we met that were so not
Yeah.
part of it. But then in the end, at
Yeah.
the very end, they came out, and the
Yeah.
head of the courtroom came out and said that they had all been praying for us, and they were so
Yeah.
amazed at what faith we had and what faith
Yeah.
in the system, and
Yeah.
which was a little questionable, but and that we had so many people that had that faith,
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
even when we didn't see it
Yeah.
as that, it was showing out to other people and things. So
Yeah. And I think it's also, kind of flipping around too. It's being aware of people who may still be in the sort of the dark, when the wine is running out, that when, for some folks, the wine is flowing abundantly, to always recognize that there's some people who don't, and sort of always,
Well, and then when you feel overwhelmed by them, there's more of them.
yeah,
Think even.
Yeah,
You may not
yeah.
know, and certainly we were making judgments at that point, but maybe that wasn't really true. You know, we were
Yeah.
not looking deep enough or
yeah,
beyond our own
yeah,
personal things. And
Yeah.
so, yeah,
Mhm.
there's been times, but it definitely helps to.
Yeah.
We are finding ourselves, you know, as we.
Yeah.
As
How do people survive in this world without faith?
I don't know.
I don't know how you can get through this. It just blows me away.
Yeah.
You think they do it all on their own?
Good luck with that.
yeah. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I really, and clearly people do. I mean, but what, so the question is then, like, what does life look like? And
Right.
to get back, I get another Greek word. Is that in Greek there are two words for life? There's bios, which is like life, yeah, and then there's Zoe, which is life. And I think that's also part of the difference. Is like, how do people get through life? Well, I mean, crickets do this, but what is this? I think that's really the sort of other question. Okay. Anything else?
I hadn't thought about it as bias.
Yeah,
So
it's
like
crazy.
the animals
That's the word. Yeah, it's
versus
like
the humans. They,
Yeah.
they don't have that next.
yeah.
They have to get what they get.
Or I mean, if they do, it's like we don't even know. So but yeah. But if mosquito, it's like, yes, we have what the mosquitoes have, clearly, but I think there's also something different. There's a Zoe, and I think that's really that sort of that seeking the apprenticeship, that sort of cultivating that Zoe.
I like that apprenticeship. That's really fun.
So that means a lot of pressure for next week. Gotta have to come up with some good nuggets. But thank you all for joining us. As always, you can email me, Jimmy@holycomforterspring.org, if you have any questions. Thank you.